Well, good morning, America. How are you? This is Pushback, brought to you by our great friend Todd Bartley and Penn Patriots Radio and TalkWilliamsport.com, and the treasure that I call Robert Knorr and Normal America. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, I pondered my opening this morning because we're in a different country than we grew up in, and change is good, but this type of change is a type of change we've never seen before. And I want to start by telling you that this morning, as we are on the air in Zoom, and I'm more trusting of Zoom than I am of YouTube. I believe that based on what we're going to talk about today, we might be taken off the air and censored. And the object of this show is to try to talk to people, normal, everyday, average Americans, not people that know everything about politics or know everything about tech or know everything about culture, just normal, everyday people that in passing might come across a story about tech or a story about the culture or a story about politics. And if you look at the polls, a lot of people aren't really interested in politics until, of course, it is time to be interested in politics. So we try to give tools based on our understanding of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights for everyday, normal, everyday, average Americans to understand. Okay, we're not, and that's how we're trying to set each other up. That's how we're trying to set us apart from everybody else. Okay, I understand we're not CNN and we're not Fox News and we're not Tucker, and certainly we're not Wendy Bell, but we're people who care. And caring is undefeated. So what we're trying to do is share what we know with you in a way that you can understand. And that way, in the battle, and make no mistake, guys, this is a battle, this is a war. In the war of information, that you have the right information. There's so much fake news and there's so much stuff online from both sides, on the left and the right, that are so hyper partisan that, and Rob's going to talk a little bit about that a little later on. He's going to talk about, graphics that have come on with respect to the percentage of voters above and beyond the registered voters that exist. And he'll talk a little bit about that a little later on. But the story that I want to tell you today is about exactly how much power our institutions have, and it's a horrifying amount of power, because when you look at what's happening today at noon, in the Capitol, every single state is going to try to have a Trump rally at every capital in the United States. Like here in Harrisburg, there's going to be a Trump rally at 12 noon. Well, that rally and that notification on Facebook, that page, that event that they have for the event today has been taken down, censored. You can't share it, can't see it. It was on for a couple of hours and they obviously found it and they removed it. It didn't talk about anything other than we're gathering on the north end of the Capitol at noon for a Trump rally. That's it, the time, the place, and what it was. It didn't talk about anything about politics. It didn't say, it didn't have a description. That's just what it was. At the very same time, Twitter permitted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to tweet about, is there anybody out there putting together a list of people that supported President Trump. A list. You know, like in Nazi Germany, a list of who they're going to come after next for reparations and re-education or whatever they have in mind or whatever she has in mind. And that tweet is still up. I will put it up. I don't want to share it on the screen while I'm doing my opening here, but this is where we are. This is the new America, or an attempt of these people to change America. So I'd like to bring on, Todd, if you're there. We have had a story come, and it came to us last week. And I want to tell you this story. It's basically a COVID story, but it punctuates exactly what we're trying to say, which a little bit later on, Rob is going to extrapolate on how much power the government has over us if you don't know what your rights are and you don't know how to defend yourself. So I guess it was last week, Todd, that I got a call from a Montoursville resident who happens to be a board member in the Montoursville school district. And he told me a story about his son, who's I guess he plays a sport. I want to say football. I know that his sister plays lacrosse. And
Soccer.
Sorry, soccer. So the son tests positive for coronavirus after the father, who's on the board of the Montoursville School District, realizes that a friend of theirs who was around them tested positive for COVID. So the father did the right thing and had the son tested along with everybody else in the family. He tests positive. That's one of two cases that came out from Montoursville 2 weeks ago that prompted the school district to forfeit the game against Loyalsock, which eventually ended up being played. Correct, Todd?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they ended up playing it, and Montoursville ended up winning it, and they're playing Danville today for the district championship.
Okay. So that being said, because of those two cases, the school district shut down the game and forfeited. But
and closed down the school for part of the week as well.
Right.
Following guidance from DOH.
Right. So moving forward, this was on I think they took the test on a Monday. They got the results on a Thursday. So the whole entire family was quarantined. Okay. And again, I want to repeat that this board member did all this under the aegis of being able to do the right thing. He's a board member. He's doing the right thing, following guidance. So Thursday, they get the test back. Everybody's negative except the son. The son, the quarantine. The son shows no symptoms on Thursday, on Friday. On Saturday, he looks like Superman. On Sunday, he's feeling great. On Monday, they're all looking at each other like, am I really sick? On Tuesday, they said, we're getting tested again. Test comes back negative. So even my dogs are saying, what? So the test comes back negative, and they go to the school district and they say, our son's negative. We're negative. Everybody's negative. And the school district says, the guidance from the state says that even if your son tested negative, you guys have to be quarantined for 14 days starting Monday, November 2nd. So they find out on a Thursday that they're negative, They have to wait until Monday for the son to go back to school. But the daughter, who is a star player for the Montoursville soccer team, can't do anything for 14 days because she's just basically related to him. And she tested negative the whole entire time. And it might have been a false positive for him, but the district shut them down. You don't understand. This is not Carlos and Todd and Rob running down a school district, because we're known for that. This is us telling you what the Department of Health and the governor of the state of Pennsylvania, by lacking a contingency for people who test positive and then test afterwards, and it turns out to be a false positive, that they have no contingency. They have no contingency. So they force these school districts, okay, under fear of stripping them of certifications and punishing them of not giving them money. Remember Lebanon County, when the governor didn't give money to Lebanon County, or he held it back? This is where we are in our country, where our government is just bullying everybody because they can, but more importantly, because we're letting them. So that's just one example of a false positive resulting in this family's liberty, because they wanted to do the right thing, to be trapped in their house for 14 days. Well, in this case, it would end up being 24 days. This isn't right. The people of Montoursville do not deserve this. This family does not deserve this, because the governor and the Department of Health and Secretary Levine do not have a plan. They're just winging it. They're just winging it. They don't know what they're doing, like everybody else. Have you figured out yet that the government is never, ever, ever, ever going to control a virus? Ever. It's like saying, Joe Biden's going to get elected and he's going to cure the cold. No, you're not. So, your quick thoughts, Todd. You're rolling to your opening statement, and then we will unleash Robert Knorr to the world.
Well, folks, that case then dovetailed into last Monday on the eve of the election. And there just so happened to be, as I predicted, a press conference at the Department of Health. So with this case that Carlos just mentioned in the back of my mind, I said, well, wait a minute. That family was contact traced. They got phone calls. Some counties received letters. Wait a minute. Tomorrow's the election. What if you've been in the contact trace program? What if you've been placed in quarantine and received that phone call or a letter that says you have to quarantine for 14 days? Having seen the letters that have been sent out since March, you'd think that 2 weeks out to the election, Department of Health would have included instructions for those sitting in quarantine on how to go vote. Oh, but wait, if you're in quarantine, you have to stay locked in the basement and you can't have contact with anybody. So where were the instructions? They weren't on the letter. So Monday, I went to the Department of Health's press conference at Pima, and very pointedly, having dropped this major story on the Department of Health, on Secretary of Commonwealth, who's in charge of the elections, Secretary Booklar, that there's been no instruction given to those sitting in quarantine or that have tested positive for COVID. It was such a concern of the Department of Health and Secretary of State that they didn't bother to put a press release out until after my story. After my appearance on the Wendy Bell Show at 11 o'clock last Monday, going into the 11:30 press conference, the Department of Health was so livid with that story, they then turned to what I refer to as state media friends from the Associated Press, York Daily Record, and USA Today. Not even 10 minutes out the door at Pima, those folks are emailing Wendy Bell, trying to reach out to me later that day for comments on my fake news story. So they do a fact check story on Wendy and I, on her show and on the story. And as they do the fact check, the last paragraph outlines the letter sent out by the Department of Health makes no mention on instructions or guidance for the election. What? And you fact check and say that it's false and prove the premise in the fact check of the entire story that there were no instructions given in the letter. So Tuesday morning, the day of the election, Secretary Bookvar has a press conference. I asked Secretary Bookvar right to her face, as the sixth media member called upon in that press conference on Zoom, after the same Associated Press writer who fact-checked me and Wendy Bell got the first question. It was something to the effect of, what's your favorite color, Secretary? It wasn't my question 6 questions in. Secretary Bookvar, whose responsibility is it to instruct those in COVID quarantine or that have COVID on how to vote? And her answer was, Todd, well, you know what the instructions are. And by the way, Deputy Secretary to the trash can, would you like to answer this question? And she hands off to an undersecretary to answer the question. Then we come to find out that Secretary Bookvar tweeted anti-Trump messages 2 years ago or 3 years ago before she was Secretary of State.
And more importantly, changed the code, the election code, hours before the election on Monday night.
Hours?
That story's breaking now as we
90
speak.
minutes.
Right.
10:30 at night, there was, oh, wait, I had that story election day too on the instructions. Version 1.0. Go to talkwilliamsport.com. You can go read it right now. So apparently she got the version 1.1 at 10:30 on Monday night going into Tuesday.
Right. So
the president, by the way, has just tweeted. I got 2 quick things, and I'll defer to Rob. 2 quick things from the president. His legal team is having a presser in Philly in 12 minutes. I'll share it to the News Talk WMPT Facebook page, which is the talkwilliamsport.com Facebook page. 39 minutes ago, the president on Facebook and Twitter, in all caps, I won this election, comma, by a lot, exclamation point. I now yield my time.
My question to you and Rob, you first, Todd, and then Rob, please. Is sending letters to contact tracing people, in other words, people that have been contact traced and are associated with knowing people who have coronavirus, is sending those letters and telling them to be quarantined, in your opinion, a form of voter suppression? You first, Todd.
Yes, and getting phone calls to say stay home? Yes. And by the way, to my understanding, there's another story breaking that leading into the election, there were any number of robocalls made in multiple states telling people to stay home. Now, you want to tell me how the president and the Republicans are suppressing the vote? Rob?
Yeah,
I defer to you.
Yeah, I mean, and this was something that we'd been saying for a long time. We had these allegations that, I don't know, Donald Trump was personally stealing mailboxes or something like that, interfering with the USPS. And I'd been saying all along, if you want to talk about voter suppression, which party is telling people to not use the most verifiable way to make sure your vote is counted? That's the Democrats. The best way to make sure your vote is counted is coming in person, even if you take fraud out of the equation. Because if you're in person and you have problems with your ballot, they have people there that could help you out to make sure that it gets counted. If you send a ballot in via mail, studies show that it's anywhere, depending on the election, from 5 to 7% of ballots sent by mail, even without fraud, just end up being rejected. So why would it be, if the Democrats are concerned about every vote being counted, why would they dissuade people from voting in person? And then we have the story that you broke. And let me just make it as clear as possible for people. If you got COVID, or if you were associated with someone who got COVID through contact tracing, you get a letter saying that you are quarantined for 14 days. The problem is, what happens if you're quarantined over the time you were going to vote? Well, it was the role of the Department of Health to say, here's how you could vote. Here's how you could get an emergency ballot. They didn't do that until Todd asked the question. Now, we know, as you could clearly see from, hundreds of thousands of votes coming in at 3 a.m., because apparently 99% of mail-in ballots, obviously I'm being hyperbolic, but the vast majority of mail-in ballots, everybody knew, they were alleging mail-in ballots will be Biden, in-person voting will be Trump. So if you're the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf, with the Democratic people underneath you, you're behooved to keep people from going out election day. One of the ways you could do that is by sending thousands of letters out saying, oh, you're quarantined, and if you leave your house, we'll forcibly quarantine you in a hospital. And it doesn't say, oh, with the exception of voting, you could go vote. It doesn't say that. So if you receive this letter, you're just like, oh, I guess I can't go vote. And then the press release that they release after Todd's story, how many people saw that? Probably not many. All you know is you're just 9-to-5 guy working. You get this letter in the mail. You're trying to abide by the law. You're like, oh, I guess I can't go out. Now, we don't know how many people were suppressed that way, but it is clear that the intent was at least, it's either gross incompetence or it was intended to have voter suppression. Now, the last thing I'll say about this, because to me, where we should be focusing on, I believe there was election fraud the day of this election, and we'll talk about the examples of it. I think some of the things people were saying were election fraud, there are explanations that possibly they weren't, which we'll also talk about. But it is undeniable, and I had been suggesting this, and I was mocked by many, many people on the conservative side. I'd been saying for months, for years, this election will be stolen, Joe Biden will win. There is nothing. I said the mistake was, in 2016, the establishment made the mistake of believing the hype. They believed everything they were saying, that Hillary Clinton had no chance of losing. So they took their foot off the gas and Trump won. I said they will not make that mistake again. They will do everything they can to steal the election. They will censor you. They will purposely collapse the economy. They will have suppression, etc. All stops. They're not going to just cheat in one way. They're going to cheat in every way imaginable to make sure never again will people not in their little special group have a position of power. And so this election was lost in March. This election was lost in 2018. You want to know why? Because we allowed the media and we allowed the tech company to control the flow of information. And we allowed them to change the way we voted 3 months before an election. And so the reason I bring this up here is, Todd, this is what I really want to focus on. The USA Today that fact-checked Todd's story, this is how they operate. This is how a fact-checker operates. They set forth a premise that they then reject that was not the premise of Todd's article, of his reporting. So the premise they set forth was this voter fraud? Was this voter suppression? And so the USA Today says there's a viral video from Wendy Bell and Todd Bartley that say that this is voter suppression. Now, I think if you ask Todd, he will say, I can't prove 100% this is voter suppression, but it certainly looks that way. If not, it's gross incompetence. But that's the opinion based on the factual story that these letters went out telling people that they had to be quarantined and there was no guidance on how they could vote. That is true, as even USA Today admits. But the way the media controls you is, instead of talking about that, the part of the story, they say, we're going to talk about Wendy Bell's opinion of the story and say that that opinion's false. So that's how they, and most people don't read the whole way through a story. So maybe they saw on Facebook, wait, what's this? Todd Bartley and Wendy Bell reporting people received quarantine notices during the election with no guidance on how to vote? Let me check the USA Today. Oh, it says that's false. Now imagine that story occurring hundreds of thousands of times, of the media purposely misleading people when they know the facts of the case. That's what happened. regardless if it was intentional or not, there was voter suppression. Period. End of story. The USA Today admits it in the bottom of their reporting. Yes, people received letters telling them to quarantine, and no, they did not receive guidance in that letter or until Todd Bartley asked the question on how they could go vote. That's it. And we need to wake up to this. You know, I hope that our show's one show that could do that. There are other shows that could do that. But you need to wake up. As long as you put faith in these organizations, such as the media, such as tech companies, and things like that, our CIA, our intel agencies, we'll talk more about that. As long as you put faith into them, we will never win. Period. That simple. So that's what I have for now.
So
the dog, by the way, over my shoulder wants to make her debut in the show.
So let me just check my notes here. And coming off of what Robert just said, what I just want to make sure that you guys understand clearly is that there is a legal term that basically says we have something called past principles, okay, and past principles is a legal term that is used, or past practices, I should say, that are used to try to create norms and the basis for some law. Past practices. Like, Rob, did they lock us down in March by using the excuse that they were going to try to flatten the curve of hospitalizations for 2 weeks, and then continued to use that to this very day to lock us down? Some states are going back to a more severe lockdown, as are some countries around the world, because there are a lot more infections today than there were at times in the past. See, that's a past practice that worked. They knew this. They knew, and I don't want to disrespect the Democratic Party and say that it was all Democrats. I know some people in my life that I would run you over with a car to protect them, that I love, that are Democrats, and they wouldn't do this because, like Rob, their number one concern in life and in politics is corruption. It's certain people, certainly the governor of this state. Okay, he happens to coincidentally be a Democrat, but this is a man that is drunk with power and will use past practices to keep us quarantined or under his thumb by sending out letters like this one to people who were contact traced regarding people that they were around because they had coronavirus. It's a war for information. It's a knowledge war, and they're going to try to consume it. One other small example, if I may, before I defer to Robert on another question. Last night, Joe Biden went on the air and said that the four major things that concerned him are coronavirus, recovering the economy that's in trouble, climate change, and the last one just jumped out of my head. Do you remember what it was? Climate change and
probably racism. I didn't watch
or some sort of yeah, white supremacy. I think it is.
Sure.
or something to that effect. Can you talk about the economy just in the last 10 days, Rob? What reports have come out, right? 33.1% GDP, the highest since 1952. And then the jobs report came out yesterday. And
guys, we have breaking news. Guys, let me interrupt you. We have breaking news. It just came across my phone. According to the Associated Press, Joe Biden has won the 2020 presidential election. That just broke on the Associated Press.
Yeah. I mean, that.
Now, we also have State Representative Russ Diamond in the waiting room. He's there with us as well. We're also waiting on an 11:30 press conference to start in Philadelphia. So, Carlos, I defer back to you. Representative Diamond is in the waiting room as well.
If you could let the representative in, we will introduce him.
So he is there. I believe we have audio from Representative Diamond, no video as of yet.
No
I'm guessing on a Saturday he may be doing the spackling and renovation work. So just as a guess. And sure enough, there he is.
Good morning. Good morning, Representative.
Basis today. I am in between other Zoom meetings, and I thought I'd just jump on here for like 5-10 minutes so I could just answer any questions you have.
So I guess the very first question that I have for you is, in order, why did Pennsylvania stop counting at 11:30 p.m. on election night?
I don't know.
Do you think that that's a reasonable answer, not from you, but from them, to the people of Pennsylvania?
I don't think so. And we are working on a method by which we can find that answer, find a satisfactory answer, and provide it to the people of Pennsylvania.
And could you give us more discernment for the average person as to the witnesses and the observers of the process of the ballot counting process? Everyone has an idea of what that is, but do you know exactly what that looks like? And the very best thing that I could say is, why don't you start by telling me what you guys do in Lebanon County and how that differs in Philadelphia County?
Well, because Lebanon County is a smaller county than Philadelphia, it's a smaller operation here, and it's very easy to get everybody together in one room with a witness from both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party and any other candidates or any other interested parties who have a legitimate purpose to stand there and watch. And we can all do it in the same room, and we're all friends because we all know each other, except for our political opposition to each other. But we all do it very peaceably and that sort of thing. In a county like Philadelphia, where you are doing it in a huge facility such as the Philadelphia Convention Center, there is the ability to separate people from that process. And that's what we heard, was that at least Republican poll watchers, which is what these people are called, or people to watch the count, they are not in the immediate area, but are kept on the other side of bicycle racks, literally 80 yards away from where all these is going on, and you really can't observe from there.
Okay.
And, if I may, just real quick, the people that are actually counting, not the poll watchers, but the actual people counting the ballots, what's the process to become one of them? And is it, because what I keep hearing from people making excuses for what happened with the poll watchers in Florida is, well, the people counting the ballots, there has to be an even number of Republicans and Democrats anyways. Is that true?
They certainly try, at least here in Lebanon County, they make a concerted effort to make sure that if you have a team of two, one's a Republican, one's a Democrat. And we try to keep it balanced here in Lebanon County. I don't know if you can actually do that in Philadelphia County, where there are very few Republicans. And that's kind of the reason that we included in House Bill 2626 that Republicans from outside the county or Democrats from outside Lebanon County could come into Lebanon and act on behalf of their party to come in and observe.
So in Pennsylvania, I'm sorry, Representative Todd, you were going to introduce Senator Mastriano.
Well, he's going to come on just in a brief moment here after Representative Diamond jumps back onto another meeting, and we may do an interjection here between the two of them before we transition out to Senator Mastriano. But quickly, Representative Diamond, Speaker Cutler announced yesterday that a full audit of the general election is something he would like to see. If you could briefly describe what that's going to look like, and if in fact the governor even is going to pay attention to it.
Well, yeah, it was a call to the governor to conduct a full audit of the election, and I would imagine that would involve every process, including, okay, how did what did you do when you received these mail-in ballots? How were they handled? Where were they stored? Did you follow the legal procedure? All that sort of thing. And that's a job for an auditor. I'm not an auditor, but that's a job for an actual auditor to do. I don't know how the governor would take that on. I'm not aware that the governor has even responded to that letter, but it's very concerning of us. And for us, it's a first step in trying to get to the bottom of this, because look, we're hearing from our constituents, and we want not just we in the General Assembly to know that this was a legal and fair election. We want the people of Pennsylvania, regardless of the outcome, to know that this is a legal and fair election, because the beginning of trust in government is trust in elections.
So my question to you is, when the Democrats say that we must count every vote, what is the context that they're omitting, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know what they mean by that, because I'm not a Democrat, but I always say, let's count every legal vote.
Right. So there's a difference between, what legal votes are and what all votes are. And
that's the crux of what the U.S. Supreme Court is currently looking at, and the order that they issued, that Justice Alito issued yesterday, demanding that every county in Pennsylvania segregate those ballots which arrived after 8 p.m. on election day, because they believe there is a federal constitutional issue with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overriding basically what the General Assembly said, which is the deadline is 8 p.m. on election day, and that's when election day is over. But the PA Supreme Court said, no, it's still 5 o'clock on Friday afterwards because of COVID. They don't really, my opinion is they don't have the authority to do that, simply because we're in the middle of COVID or whatever. And it's a federal constitutional issue. And that is why Justice Alito issued the order to all 67 counties, because it was clear, or it was not clear, that all 67 counties had done that.
So Rob is going to ask you a question regarding why we should or should not be confident that the courts will come and save us. Rob, why don't you ask him, the thing we've been talking about for the last 3 days?
Yeah. And then right after that, Senator Mastriano is going to join us.
Okay.
We've got a window of about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. So just real quick, my point was, it seems oftentimes conservatives over and over again rely on the courts, particularly when it comes to issues of corruption. And it seems like more often than not, that ends up being a disappointment, such as if this goes to the Supreme Court. We know before Barrett was there in a 5-3, so 5 would be enough to give the Democrats their way. They said, you can go to a casino in Nevada, but you can't go to church. And so what confidence do you have that if there was something that happened, that the courts won't make the decision, geez, if we overturn a state like this that would overturn an election, there's going to be a lot of problems?
My confidence relies in my belief in our American system of government and our American system of jurisprudence, in that when issues arise, the judges and courts will view it as independent agents rather than agents of one party or another. I have faith in that system. I believe in that system. However, in this particular instance, I also believe that the legislature of Pennsylvania has a little bit more authority than we normally would when we take a case to court. So, and that's where I'm just going to have to leave it, because I got to jump off onto this other call now. now. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know Doug's waiting. Doug, good to see you again. I'll probably see you soon in another call. All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. There it is, Representative Russ Diamond, and he just transitioned flawlessly to State Senator Doug Mastriano, who was just in the waiting room a moment ago, and he.
Todd, let me ask you, as you're trying to get him, I thought that the day before the election that we had spoke that it was already the legal status that these ballots were going to be kept in separate piles. So, for example, ballots that signature did not match the voter registration would be kept in one pile. Ballots that came in after election day would be kept in another pile, etc. Apparently that didn't happen. Was that legally what they were required to do before the election and they just ignored it? Or were they only required to do that after Alito made this order?
No, that was always. Here's what's even better. You ready for this? This is in version 1 from Secretary Bookvar. You're to separate everything that comes in 3 different buckets after election night, up until 3 days later. Oh, you know what?
Explain to them what had to be separated, Todd. Just real quick. Explain to the audience what votes had to be separated. The ones that came in after 8 o'clock.
Yes, there are 3 different buckets, and forgive me, I'm paraphrasing. Disputed ballots that were already being litigated, right? Mm-hmm. That was one bucket. There was another bucket that you needed to put them in that had another category, and then the other one was anything else that came in. Oh, I know what it was. It was the goofy postmark. If they didn't have a postmark or it was no postage, that was one bucket. And then anything else that came in after 8 o'clock, that's a third bucket. Well, my understanding was in Philly, and this is why they put the paper up and everything else, they're running them concurrently.
Right.
That's why they didn't want anybody to see it.
And to be clear, they're not separating those ballots.
Correct.
So one of the problems with us getting a court order to get in there and view what they're doing is that the damage has already been done. And how do you separate the ballots after the fact?
Right. And Senator Mastriano's jumping in. He's connecting to audio right now. First of all, Senator, thanks for taking the time. I know you got about an 8 to 10 minute window here with us. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. And sorry about that. I'm just picking up calls from my colleagues here. We're still working on a way ahead. You know, all the highfalutin talk, you know, and all this noble stuff here ain't going to work. We're going to have to be really wise and shrewd in the way ahead. I don't know how the court's going to go, but it is in the hands of the courts right now. I do have and I've been talking directly with the Trump team and trying to figure out, you know, a smart way ahead. They have given me a list, about 25 specific examples with names and phone numbers of people that had fraudulent actions done to them during the voting, which needs to be put forth, obviously, in the legal case that they're pursuing. But I do have hope for people. In 1993, there was a state senator in Philadelphia that died. This is taking you back. And there was actually, in the deep blue area, a Republican actually ran against this guy. And the Democrats in Philly couldn't help themselves and still cheated, even though the election was a walkaway. It went to court in February 1994. And a federal district judge, his name was Judge Clarence Newcomer, he saw evidence of extreme fraud, and he gave the election to the Republican. So we have a precedent. I'm trying to get this in the hands of the Trump team. I'll try to call them later. So we do have a federal judge tossing the election towards the other party when one party demonstrated so much documented chicanery. So there is hope.
Rob?
Yeah, and that was exactly one of the questions I had, because the argument that I'm afraid will be made is, well, we found 10,000 instances of voter fraud here in Pennsylvania, but Trump lost by 20,000, so that's still not enough. At what point do we say, if we could document incident after incident after incident of this fraud in different ways, and it's all going in one direction? Every time it's going, oh, there was a glitch, 6,000 votes in Michigan. Oh, those were stolen from the Republicans and the Democrats. Oh, there were ballots lost. Oh, those were all for Trump. Oh, there were people that just filed the president and only voted for Biden. Oh, and every time they only voted for Biden. Like, how do we articulate to both the public so that they understand the argument that we're making, and to the courts that this is an example? If you catch 10,000 instances of fraud, it probably occurred many, many more times that you didn't catch.
Yeah, I thank you for that. So I think we need to stop the high talk and talk like we are in Philly. Talk like common people and lay it out there. In 1993, they cheated their way to a seat, and they had the seat ripped away from them. And it was a big deal. Okay, what's the so what? That was a state Senate seat. That one seat flipped the state Senate of Pennsylvania to the Republicans, and ever since then, we've always held the state Senate. That was a huge mark right there. They never got the Senate back since then. So,
Senator,
yes, please.
when you're talking about straight talk and how people talk in Philadelphia, let me give you what's coming from the battlefield in Lycoming County. Straight
All right.
talk. Why did they stop the vote count at 11:30 on election night? And
Yeah.
why are they not letting observers in to see what's going on? That's the talk in Lycoming County of average, normal Americans
Yep.
when the presidency is at stake. What do you think about that? What do you think the answer is to that?
And I'll tell you straight up, yeah, I did go to school in Philly. My grandma grew up in Philly, and I went to school in Philly. You only do that kind of stuff if you're going to cheat. And so, Book Barr, the Secretary of State, said we're going to be counting votes 24/7. So why they take a break there? Why they take a break in Allegheny County as well when things were going against them? So there's nothing good can come from this. Frank Ryan you probably had on. What did he tell us the other day? Nothing good happens after 2 a.m. So we see suddenly at 4 a.m. suddenly there's 100,000 boosts for Biden overnight. It's like this is bull crap. I'm not standing for it. And I'm tired of the Democrats being caught with their hand in a cookie jar. Nothing happens. So all these instances of voter fraud, of cheating, of pushing out Republicans, there needs to be ramifications. Guys and gals in Philly need to go to jail if they are part of this. And so I think there's a way ahead. But it's nice that they want to declare moments ago. Pennsylvania went for Biden. I don't know how any rational journalist could declare Pennsylvania for Biden when there's so much evidence of cheating and chicanery going on here, and it just needs to stop. They need to be just pushed out. They need to take a breath, and let's see what the Supreme Court says.
Well, they said that because they know that the allegations of corruption are mounting up, and it's a wall of corruption that we're now facing.
Yeah.
When you asked, why did you stop counting at 11:30 on election night? What was the answer that was given to you by people in power?
Yeah.
What did they say to you when you asked, why did you stop counting on Tuesday night?
Oh, they gave a bunch of answers and reasons, and it's typical mumbo jumbo political talk.
So no direct.
Do we have
answer.
Do we have an attorney general that said that Trump was going to lose the election before one vote was counted? Yes. Do we have a election official in Philadelphia that was fined and imprisoned for taking bribes on voter fraud? Yes. So that's what we have in Philadelphia. That's what we have in Pennsylvania. I really don't care what they tell me. They should not have stopped. That was wrong. But was that illegal? I don't know. I don't think so. But these documented of 25 specific Pennsylvanians that had fraud committed against them and violations of election law. These will be pursued. I'm a bit taken aback, though. We're lacking unity of effort on the Republican side. Right now, we should be focused on the truth. If Biden wins fair and square, so be it. But if he goes over the line here with cheating and fraud and lots of evidence of chicanery, then that can't stand. So the way ahead for the people is they can continue counting votes until the 23rd of November, believe it or not. It's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But right now it's in the hands of the court. When Justice Alito last night said you have to segregate all votes that came in after 8 p.m. on election day, only 42 counties complied that we know of. So what's up with the other counties of the 67? And guess what? Which other ones didn't say that they complied?
And in the response brief,
the vote because of that, based off the 9.
And in the response brief that the Democrats submitted last night that was due by 2 o'clock today, Senator, the Democrats said, well, on behalf of Book Barr and Attorney General Shapiro and the governor said, we're already doing that. Well, then why are you not letting anybody watch in Philadelphia? Why, as you mentioned, is there such a disparity in the number of counties that are implementing what was supposed to be already done?
Yeah.
Why are the Democrats
later, and Biden's won the presidency on a projection by the national media?
And that Alito saw there was such a big problem, at the behest of the Republican complaint, that he had to come out and restate that, because that was already restated. And we know for a fact that was out there, because Book Barr at 10:30 at night, 8.5 hours before the polls were opening up the next day, issued guidance to all 67 counties that they had to segregate as a result of this potential lawsuit. but not all of them complied with that, because then she issued contradictory guidance saying you have to count all votes quickly. So how do you merge those two? And obviously certain cities couldn't handle that.
Why did you vote against Secretary Bukvar's confirmation?
Yeah, and I was last on here. I was not alone, no vote for her on the floor. I was joined by Senator Mensch, Senator DeSanto, and Senator Scott Hutchinson. So those voted against her because she could not tell me straight up. Yeah, I could not tell her straight up. I asked her, why are elections in Afghanistan more safe and secure? She sat there and blinked. I waited for her all 4 times, 4 different occasions, to say, hey, Senator, I disagree with you. She never did. And then I said, here's why I said that. I was there as part of the International Security Assistance Force with NATO. We oversaw elections. Guess what? To vote, you had to show an ID card. Do you do that in Pennsylvania? Nope. After you vote, you dip your finger in an inkwell, so you only vote once. In Pennsylvania, nope. I said, we found out that was a mistake because Taliban would kill anybody with an ID card or an ink-stained finger. So then we went to retinal scans and bioscans. I don't want that in Pennsylvania. But my case was, how can a third world country be torn by war since 1979 have better, fair elections where every legal vote is equal and 1 vote per person? And she sat there and blinked and then answered ridiculous things. It's talking, saying nothing. And so I gave 4 chances. I asked her the same question. She never prepped for that. So, my colleagues, I talked to them. I had my memory refreshed. I talked to Scott Hutchinson last night, and they were of the same mind that she had no vision of how to fix our elections, and she appeared to be a political hack. Because remember the tweets she issued in 2017 mocking President Trump, and so she was unfit for office in all 4 of our minds, and she has been and proven to be so.
Did you know about the tweet then?
I did not, but apparently my colleagues did.
Okay.
Here's the thing that drives me crazy, and we get this from leadership in the Pennsylvania Senate. The governor, very noble. We're so self-righteous. We're good Republicans. The governor should have whoever he wants on, his cabinet. And I'm like, well, why do we even vote then on the confirmation if it's going to be perfunctory? We should, yes,
right.
The governor should pick who he wants, but that person should be competent and not somebody who's going to be a political hack like she
Right.
is.
Is it too much to ask for them to be professional?
Yeah, absolutely not. We demand and expect that, and she has proven not to be that at all. That's why, there was so much wrong with her. On another case that let me give you an example of the quality of the A team that Wolf has. One recent appointee, he's going to oversee the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. Now, I know a lot of these hearings, people, Republicans and Democrats play stump the chump. They ask stupid questions for a soundbite. I don't do that. I just want to know. I said, okay, you want to take over the Turnpike. What are you going to do to fix their financial situation? And what's your vision to make it more efficient and effective? And the dude couldn't answer me. He kept on saying, reimagine. So that's the kind of incompetence. So Wolf is using his cabinet to pay off people politically that got him in office.
Todd?
Senator, we've just gotten the notification today from Department of Health. Highest daily increase of 4,035 additional positives brings statewide total to 227,985. Record high testing of over 50,000 PCR tests. Your reaction?
I had to deal with analytics and numbers almost my entire career as a military intelligence officer, and that number is so irrelevant and useless that they need to stop talking about it. The only thing that really matters there is, of course, hospitalization rates and respirator use.
Right.
How many hospital beds are being used, and how severe are those that need to be on respirators? All this other stuff is utter nonsense. When you have something like COVID-19 is not this great threat to mankind, when you have over a 99% recovery rate in all age categories, this is not a big deal. Unless you have, 2 or 3 pre-existing health conditions, you're probably going to be okay. 99% recovery rate. For those who suffered and it was a hard time, sorry about that, but 99% of the population doesn't have that kind of reaction. So we're being played, and I'm sick and tired of these numbers being thrown around, especially by the lunatic 1/3 in the state that comply and obey with the governor. The so what is these numbers are being used to manipulate us, and maybe as a pretense to shut us down again. And Pennsylvania, will you stand aside? Will you comply or obey, or will you walk as a free person? I'm just tired of it here because it's propaganda. Nobody in the media Todd, except you and a handful of others, very few in the media are actually asking the hard questions of so what. As a military intelligence officer, I'd brief the commander on all these key pieces of information, and I had to deliver the so what. Okay, so you have all these positives, and why is there an increase? Because we're in cold and flu season, duh, follow the science. And number two, we're doing more testing. So of course you're going to get more positives. It's completely irrelevant information.
And I just wanted to,
Rob, real quick, before you chime in, I want to give you the Lycoming County numbers. They didn't move. Over 4,000 new positives. I just double checked the coding on the links that we go. If this stays accurate, and I'll double check it again after noon, because just in case they hit refresh, as of 11:55 as we do this, the Lycoming County numbers from yesterday haven't changed, but it's dated for today.
So they've already, if they were going to file, they would have filed already.
It's the same link I go to every day.
All right. So in other words, to be clear, if they would have filed for today, they would have filed already, correct? Lycoming County?
And the numbers should have moved.
Right.
Now,
So,
Mike,
Rob?
yeah, Senator, again, thanks for joining us. My question's real simple. Everyone's talking about election fraud, ballot fraud, and things like that. There's a lot to talk about with that, and I think that firmly believe that happened. But I feel this election was lost well before that. We are setting up a system because of the establishment's control of the media, of tech companies, and the flow of information. They won't have to steal one ballot come the next election because they are able to propagandize every American into believing exactly what they want. What is the game plan to fight back against this flow of information?
Being a military intelligence officer, I'm trained in information operations campaigns, and I actually help plan them overseas. And so anyway, I've never seen a more concerted, more organized, and well-orchestrated information operations campaign ever in my experience in life here, as far as what the big tech companies are doing. And I'm sick and tired of politicians and politics. I'm sick and tired of the politicians identifying a problem and doing nothing about it. Our U.S. Senate has been talking about, and our Republican senators in D.C. have been talking about, big tech, and that we need to suspend the exemption they have under Section 230, but they never done that. Why the hell not? I mean, so we've been letting this thing rot and fester. The first company needs to be broken up like Ma Bell did in 1980s, anti-monopoly move, should be Twitter. Twitter is the most abrasive, abusive of this, and that incompetent CEO, he needs to go. His company needs to be shattered. Set the example, maybe Facebook and the other ones will get in line, but there should have been action. And as a result of that here, we've been propagandized and we've been censored. Both of my pages reach millions of people normally. Both of my pages were shadow banned 62%. So there was a straight fixed algorithm against conservative pages. At least in my case, both were equal, which is unheard of. Mathematically, that's impossible.
So your thoughts on Cortez's tweet yesterday, looking to create lists of conservatives that helped Trump vis-a-vis them taking down the notice for the event today at the Capitol and all the other capitals around the country. This is real. This type of censorship is real, is it not, Senator?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, it happened to me. It happens to me every election cycle. It's been 3 years in a row. Every time before a general election, they slam down on me, and my people get kicked off of pages. I have pages across the state there. My admins are kicked off for no reason whatsoever. We don't post anything that's really, conspiratorial. Our stuff just might be conservative, and they might not like it. And so it's real, and it's scary to me that we have lunatics like AOC want to compile blacklists of people they don't like. I mean, that is the epitome of what socialists do. They want to have hit lists. They want to have lists to push us out, and then when they get power, they don't want us to have anything to say. When I have people across the state reaching out to me saying they got fired for a social media post that was pro-Trump, you think about the sheriff in Lancaster, where that intolerant, bigoted mayor was allowed to fire him because the sheriff's wife dared to do a positive post about Donald Trump, and she got away with it. These people are the most intolerant folks out there, and they want to shut us down.
So, Rob, a closing question?
As someone who was involved in intelligence operations, another thing that I have a problem. You saw Sidney Powell talk about the potential of two programs being used to steal ballots. One was called Scorecard and one's called Hammer. Allegedly, this is what our CIA uses to switch votes in other countries. Now, I don't know the specifics of these programs, but I believe our CIA has that capability. My question is this: seeing as how basically the National Republican Party and people like Bill Barr and John Durham have done absolutely nothing about the intelligence community's coup against Donald Trump, how can we as an American electorate have faith when our own intelligence community has been proven to go after our president that they didn't put their finger on the scale of the election?
Yeah, so I had a top secret special compartmental information access years, my entire time in uniform. Always. There was never a lapse. And so as soon as I reported to duty at the U.S. Army Intelligence Center in school in Arizona, I always had that clearance. And with that clearance there, I had access to the highest level of information. I ran black operations in various continents around the world, and I get it. But one thing that I was told in my training and throughout my career, if I conducted any operations against U.S. citizens or on the continental United States, that was a jailable offense. I could not do that. So I don't know where along the line that these intel professionals, in quotation marks, these people that work in the intel community, can get away with spying on an American campaign in 2016. That offense should land people in jail. And I'm sick and tired. Barr comes out and he says all the right things, gets us excited. And what the heck has he done since he's been there? Has there been any serious indictments? Anyone gone to jail, of high levels on the Democrat side or the intel community? John Bredin, Comey, how'd they get away with this? Because I couldn't have got away with it. I'm sick of it. And so this shows you how bad the swamp is. If Donald Trump gets 4 more years, I think so. He's drained the swamp, but it hasn't been cleaned out. The next 4 years will be cleaning the swamp. If Biden's in, that swamp's going to stay, and it's going to stink worse.
So my last question to you, and I'm going to post it here on our chat, but I'd like you to comment on it if you could. Could you tell us exactly how you feel about the news that a Michigan County Court clerk caught a glitch in the tabulation software that counted votes and found a glitch that said that 6,000 votes went to Biden that were meant to go to Trump? And how do you feel about the fact that the company that owns that software is owned by the husband of Speaker Pelosi?
When some of these states went to automated systems there, we were always concerned about votes being switched and flipped. And you'll notice 90% of the time when there's an error, it's always to the benefit of Democrats. I'm like, really? And then you have a conflict of interest. Like, nobody researched the owners behind all this here, that there might be a problem if, one of the most powerful Democrats in the country is connected with that firm. I mean, give me a freaking break. That's why we always have to have an audit trail and a paper trail. There always has to be a hard copy for recounts, because I don't trust the automation. There's too much room for error.
How do you feel about the fact that this same exact program, Senator, is being used in 30 states, including every single state where there are votes, including Nevada and Arizona and Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Georgia? Every single state that we have a conflict with has this program. Your thoughts?
Yeah. It was a stupid move, clearly. I mean, idiotic move. So if we look, our republic can't stand, if can't last, endure, if people in the country don't think that their votes matter. And right now we're seeing that the Democrats' mantra, every vote counts. It's very Orwellian newspeak there. Yeah, that sounds nice, but okay, what do they mean? Every legal vote, every single vote that one person casts 100, for the same person. I mean, so we got to get back to basics here. And if we can't trust the outcome of an election by using software that obviously has a problem, and what's the backup to that? How do we know that the votes have been cast? And that's why in my county, we scan the ballots. So you can look at an audit trail, and the ballots are actually collected as well. So you put your fingers on the ballots. But if you go to a strictly automated system, it's a disaster waiting to happen. And we're seeing that played out before us now, to our demise.
What is the core message that you want to share with the people of Pennsylvania right this second at 12:04 p.m. on Saturday, November 7th?
I'm big into our founders, and our founders faced daunting situations. And George Washington in 1775, when he commissioned 2 ships out of his own pocket to begin our Navy, he had a flag created, a white flag with a big Douglas fir tree on it, and it was an appeal to heaven was written over it. So his view was we could only win fighting the world superpower in 1775 with God's help. So like Washington and like Lincoln and like FDR and almost every president in our history, we need to cry out to God for help. And number 2 is engage your senators and reps. Ask them what you're going to be doing about this here, because I'm a bit taken aback that instead of being worried about a republic, many of my colleagues, not all, but many of my colleagues are more worried about their seat, losing it in 2 years or 4 years, than they are about the fate of our republic.
Right.
And if these people, where have they been the past 8 months? There's only been a handful of us out there fighting for our freedoms, and so we're seeing who the fighters are or not. But so what? Right now everything's at stake. And if they're going to stand aside, we don't really need them in office anyway. But we will lose our republic. We'll be like ancient Rome that still had a Senate, but it was just a joke. It was symbolic, and that's how we'll end if we don't get back our republic. And then the last thing is right now, this is being played out in the courts. And when the U.S. Supreme Court is done making its decisions on all the complaints from the Republican Party, from the Trump team, and others. Then after that, we'll have to see about this proposal, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, whether the General Assembly will rise up and appoint the electors, irregardless of what Philadelphia said.
Yeah, and that has to be done by November 30th.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing because the House and Senate, we make our own rules, right? And so show me in the Constitution where we're not in session any longer. So if we really want it, look, I don't play games. I don't play politics, and I'm sick of it. So I was told last night that I had a hard mark of 30 November, and the leadership will probably stick with that. But if they wanted to, they could expand that out until the next group is sworn in January. Why would we lame duck for a month when our republic's at stake? But yeah, right now they're saying they're gonna stop everything on 30 November. But if we create a joint commission to investigate this and to help find the truth, that thing can happen irregardless of whether we're in session or not.
One more question. And my training from Rob Knorr has basically led to this question. Is there anybody on the other side of the aisle that hates corruption as much as you do that's upset about this?
So let me frame my answer here, because people just assume Mastriano's Republican, therefore he's partisan. No, that's complete bullcrap. I suspended my political freedoms and rights and voice for 30 years to defend everybody's freedoms, regardless of your party affiliation or none at all. But my perspective is I've always held out hope that my Democrat colleagues will stand up and do something right for the people. And in my experience, the past 8 months, they have been given many opportunities to stand up for the people of the state, and they've consistently refused to stand with the people and rather fight for their partisan politics with Wolf. And a few will cross the aisle and vote with us, but when it counts for the override of veto, they'll switch their votes. So I don't see one person on a Democrat side with the courage and the wherewithal or the care for a republic that's going to fight for our freedoms. And I'm sorry to say that. I wish I was wrong.
So certainly nobody after Election Day has come to you and said, I'm concerned about this corruption. On the Democratic side.
No. Bunch of Republicans, but no Democrats.
Todd?
I'm sickened by it. This is, for me, I put, any veteran, so I'm not overplaying my veteran status here, any veteran put their butts on the line and got shot at, many of us did, to defend our Republican freedoms. When I put my hand on that Bible and took that oath 7 times in uniforms and once as a citizen, as a senator, that's my solemn oath and Commonwealth. And for the people on the other side of the aisle do the same thing, but make it a mockery, but nothing but a means to an end, is sickening to me. We deserve better in Pennsylvania. We need better.
Todd?
That's all I got. I just really appreciate you taking the time, Senator. I know you've been quite busy, and with everything going on, keep up the good fight, right?
Thank you. You guys too. Hang in there.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess. Go ahead.
I got all kind of news for you guys. The Philly press conference is going on right now. They've had folks that are poll watchers and everything else that have come to the podium. Rudy Giuliani's running the show right now on this podium because they fully anticipate to go before the full Supreme Court to make their arguments. You've had people say They were put away. They were sent away by police, by Democrat poll watchers in Philadelphia. And the shenanigans that they've laid out, that they witnessed firsthand, they need to be in front of the Supreme Court. This is just getting started. This is so the projections, and Joe Biden telegraphed it last night. Don't know if anybody was watching. I hope to speak to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he threw the gauntlet down and said, we're going to end it by Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care what the Supreme Court's going to do. We don't care. It's ours. Get out of the way.
Right.
This is just getting started, folks. Buckle up.
Rob,
Yeah.
based on that information that he just gave us, tell me what you're hopeful about and what you're not hopeful about regarding the veracity of these claims by these people, which on the face of it, I would tend to believe, okay, on the face of it, because there's some people that are coming out that are Democrats that are saying that are poll watchers, not politicians, poll watchers, okay, specifically the one that came on Tucker Carlson 2 nights ago, or maybe last night. But is this enough for the Supreme Court to sit there and I think it's enough for them to look at it, but tell me what your concerns are specifically, if you can, as to, is it enough to be able to put forth the contingency of maybe a recount or a withdrawal of 100,000 ballots that came after 8 o'clock, or which would be enough to give the state to Trump, or some other contingency? Your thoughts?
Nothing's going to change. Joe Biden won. The courts, for various reasons. So there's logistics reasons why it won't work. So, for example, let's say we think that the ballots that came in after 8 o'clock should be rejected. Well, we know that they weren't keeping them in separate piles. So what are you going to do? What about the ones without postmarks? They no longer have the envelope they came in. You just have a stack of ballots. So if they're like, okay, recount, get rid of the ones that were post-dated. Okay, we don't know which ones those were. They're not. So what are they going to do? They're just going to be like, oh, go ahead, Todd, if you have an answer.
No,
you're muted.
You're on mute.
It's real simple. Judge Alito had already given them guidance and said, you're going to do it the right way because there's not enough time to hear this case before the election. They screwed it up.
So
So
what
for
you're
the moment
saying,
they stopped and he was up 500,000 votes or 600,000 votes, everything else after that's gone.
They won't
It's
do
gone.
it.
It's real simple.
They won't do it. There's no way. Consider this, right? First off, consider the fact that the flow of information, the narrative is completely set by the left wing. Now, consider the fact that we've watched cities burn around this country while we're in a pandemic and we're locked down. We've watched left wingers burn down these cities. Consider the fact that we saw Washington, D.C. and other cities boarding up their stores because they knew if Donald Trump won that the left would riot. Do you think these judges are going to have the wherewithal to say, look, we don't know who won this election, and there was a screw up where we didn't separate these piles of votes, but we're going to go ahead and reverse it, knowing that what we saw this year, it will be 1,000 times worse, and it will be allowed to occur. The Democratic mayors, the Democratic governors, they'll allow it to occur. This country will be lit on fire. And it's like I was telling Carlos the other day, there was allegedly the referees in the famous Steelers game with the Immaculate Reception said, if we don't allow this touchdown to stand, we're not going to make it out of Pittsburgh alive. That's what these justices are going to, their lives are on the line. They know that they will be, if these justices would vote to overturn the results of an election, not based on, we could literally see 1 million fraudulent votes. But based on the state of Pennsylvania didn't properly count, and so now a bunch of votes, some of which could be legitimate, we're going to toss out because the government didn't put them in the proper piles. This country will be lit on fire like we haven't seen since the Civil War. So these justices, assuming that they're legitimate, assuming that they're not bought and paid for as part of the establishment, I don't see them doing that. Now, then you have to get to, would they actually be willing to do the right thing anyways? I have no faith. I'm tired of putting my faith in courts only to lose over and over and over again, and I just think it's false hope. I hope I'm wrong, but that's my impression of it.
And Carlos, I'm not downing anything Rob just said, but here's what it was on the punt on the Pennsylvania case to get it in front of the full Supreme Court, which Judge Alito has already said it's coming to the full Supreme Court. On the punt before the election, 4-4. It was 4-4. And ACB hadn't cast a vote because she hadn't been read in yet. She's fully read in. She's a constitutionalist. Loves this country. It's 5-4. Everything's overturned by Amy Coney Barrett, a 5-4 decision by the end of November, early December.
So that's Pennsylvania.
And again, that's a theory. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen.
Right.
That's a theory.
Right. But that's Pennsylvania.
That's all 5 of these cities.
I know, I'm just saying, that's Pennsylvania.
That's Detroit, Milwaukee, Philly, Atlanta, Vegas. That's the 5. And maybe even into Arizona for a 6th one.
But
that's where the litigation is.
But those states don't have the 3-day comfort period after the election like Pennsylvania.
No, but they
does.
are contesting the ballots that were brought in at 3:00 in the morning with a suitcase or a cooler. In Michigan, they're contesting that. They're contesting, as Rob's going to get into here graphically, the instances in Milwaukee. They're contesting that as well. There's enough there over the next month. The great news is now, I'm seeing it already on social media. It's over, this and that and the other. Folks, that's fine. Believe it. Go to work, go to church tomorrow, go to work on Monday. Believe that. Take it to heart. It's not over. It's not even close to being over.
Yeah, no, we know that we're probably going to be talking about this for the next 3 weeks. My question is, Todd, what kind of candidate doesn't come out and say that I want the entire country to be united, and we start by making sure that both parties have access to the vote count to legitimize his own ascendancy to the presidency? What kind of person doesn't say that?
Right.
Because
and
I haven't heard Joe Biden say that. And there's no way that he is ever going to be considered, regardless of what anybody says, including big tech and the media and all these institutions. It will always be a stain on his presidency that he did not ask for there to be transparency in the voting process. And the reason why our voting process is the greatest one in the world is because we allowed observers to go into a room and all of us count the votes together. No?
And to your point, having not done that, and in this glorious speech he's going to give later today or tonight, claiming victory, I don't think they realize the damage that they're doing to their own party in the off-year election next year, in the midterms and governor's races in 22, governor's races and everything coming in 23, in the future 24 election. 70 million Americans aren't down for this. I can tell you that now. And how many of the 74, 75 million votes that are in the column currently for Joe Biden are actual, legitimate, cast by a living human votes?
Well, so let me push back on that. And Rob, I want to bring you in. I'm sorry, but the Democrats got the opportunity to cheat because the margin was too close in Oregon. And moreover, in Oregon and Washington and Minnesota and Wisconsin, where there was rioting, the president didn't know how to talk to people in that state, and he lost those states because he was too afraid of being called an authoritarian by letting the riots continue unabated. In some cases, like Portland, more than 100 days of rioting. In Seattle, an outside group of drug addicts, hippies, and pipers took over 6 blocks of Seattle for almost a month. And the average American said, what did the president do?
But you're making two arguments that aren't logically consistent. You're saying that there was fraud and he really won, but he lost those areas.
No, I'm saying that it was too close to begin with. It was too close to begin with in Wisconsin and in Michigan and in Ohio and in Pennsylvania and in Arizona and Nevada and Georgia. It was too close to begin with. The reason why they're able to cheat so handily, okay, with the exception of Pennsylvania, where they had to ham-fistedly cheat, is that the numbers were close enough where they could fudge them.
I mean,
okay.
yeah.
Yes, I brought in Oregon and Washington and Minnesota. That's it. Maybe that should be another discussion. But the point is that the reason why we didn't win those states as Republicans is because we didn't know how to talk to them. And then the other states where it was too close, the Democrats cheated because they had the opportunity. It was too close. How could it have been too close, Rob?
I don't know. I just think the discussion, for example, setting ourselves up for 2022, if we think there was evidence of fraud, if it goes to the court and they don't reverse this, does it matter if 99% of Americans are upset with that? No, because they've just proven they could steal an election.
Right.
So do you think that Joe Biden sitting around saying, my legitimacy as president will be hampered because I didn't speak out against the fact that in Philadelphia, Republican poll watchers were allowed to keep away. This is how low Republicans have fallen. This is how pathetic we are. We all understand that. Right. We're sitting around talking about, well, you know, will Biden be like, gosh, geez, I wish I had a little more legitimacy? Or will he wield power and say, I won, shut the hell up? That's what he's going to do. Right. That's what's going to happen. You know,
we'll talk to you tomorrow. He said.
That's right. So look, the question of again, the election was stolen. There were two types of ways the election could be stolen. The one was fraud on voter days. The fraud in the election. I see plenty of evidence suggesting that that's without a doubt most likely the case. I can't prove any of it, but it seems that's most likely the case. We'll see what happens in court. I'm very pessimistic. Todd's optimistic. I hope Todd's right. I really do. But it was stolen before that. It was stolen when the people we elect as Republicans that we've elected since Trump in 2016 told us every day they were going to do something about tech censorship. They were going to do something about the intel agencies engaged in a coup against Donald Trump. They were going to look out for the little guy and help out with like rural workers and stuff like that. But instead they embraced the logic of Black Lives Matter, saying we're systemically racist. And they locked us down and allowed people like Governor Wolf to have politically motivated lockdowns with doing anything. That's where the election was lost. When they allowed the Democrats to change the way that we do our votes 3 months before an election, that's when the election was lost. That's how I was confident to call that Joe Biden was going to win, because the corruption leading up. And so we are going to get into this quagmire. I hope that we could prove that a lot of the things we'll talk about here were actually fraudulent. But if we don't change those first things, that first group, it won't matter. It doesn't matter. They'll just win every election here. And I don't mean the Democrats, by the way. Make no mistake, this isn't Democrat versus Republican. This is establishment versus the people outside of the establishment. Right. And you heard Senator Mastriano put it very succinctly. He's tired of seeing these Republicans, particularly at the national level, say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to fight against these tech companies, we're going to fight against the media corruption, we're going to fight against the intel community, and do nothing. People like that will maintain power, and people like Mastriano, who deserves to have a position of leadership, won't be able to achieve it because his own party puts forth a bunch of people that just pay lip service but don't actually do anything of relevance when it comes to stopping this corruption.
Cabal-like, as you've said before. Todd, explain to the people what Rob meant by saying changing the rules 6 weeks before the election. What he means is regarding voting because of COVID, correct?
Yeah, so the governor and secretary of state.
Explain to the people, you know, in the simplest form, what Rob means about the voting post facto election day.
Okay, so everybody can see the writing on the walls for the year, right? There's no enthusiasm. You got 16 circles in Gettysburg and 3 people that are turned away at the door, right? He's not drawing anybody. The governor even said that to me.
Biden isn't, right?
Biden is not drawing anybody. He sent letters to the Trump campaign. You got to stop showing up. Stop showing up. You're going to, spread COVID and everything else, right? So when they saw that and started putting the battle plan together, there was no legitimate way Joe Biden is winning Pennsylvania. None. So they concoct this plan about the mail-ins that they sent to everybody. They mailed everybody. My son got a half a dozen of them. How many of them did he cast? 0, because we went in person. the day of the election. And you don't think it's rigged? They turned away poll watchers in Philly. Why? There's video footage of a poll worker filling ballots in real time in Philadelphia on camera. Nobody's watching.
And those don't include the one he did at home before you came, right?
Right. Yeah.
Now, let me,
Rob,
Cooler in a suitcase, everything else. I'm just telling you now. Let me be blunt. Senator Mastriano, Representative Diamond, they are at the front of the pack leading the charge. Speaker Cutler, we want an audit.
No, that's a two-man pack.
Everybody.
It's a 2 or 3 man pack if you add Cutler. That's it. That's the pack.
Okay? You're seeing what real leadership in the face of undaunting odds, shadow banned on social media, big tech, let's file the lawsuits, let's silence you, let's bury you financially. Folks, if they're going to do it to the president and they're going to do it to people that are taking the fight to them, what are they going to do to you?
Right.
Now, let's be clear. Let me be clear. First off, I believe that there was fraud that occurred during this election, but we have to be clear and look at it from all possible angles. So, for example, there are graphics going around that 130% of registered voters in Pennsylvania voted. That's not true. That's a lie. It's easily checkable. And you look like a fool if you're repeating things like that. Not saying anyone here has, but I just want to let people know that. So, in the spirit of that, Todd, I have heard a reasonable explanation for what looks like poll workers filling out ballots, and that is as follows. Ballots that were, for whatever reason, were unable to be scanned will be read by one person. So they'll say, voted for Joe Biden, voted for the Democratic House, voted for the Democratic Senate. Then the other poll worker sits there filling out a duplicate ballot so that it'll scan through the machine. So I just want to say, am I saying that the video that appears to show people filling out ballots isn't fraud? I'm not saying that, but there is a reasonable explanation for what it could be. You know,
that's one of the situations that they need to put in the 3 disputed buckets.
I totally agree. That's where, so, you know, for me, this is just a brief list of the stuff that I have that I think goes to show that there's possible fraud going on. 1, the stop counting in the middle of the night, or stop recording, however you want to put it, by 5 swing states, by just the cities in there that are overwhelmingly Democrat.
And one of them is still stopped.
Right. That, they said they were done counting for the middle of the night, so you go to bed at like 2, 3 in the morning, you're up watching it. Oh, they're not going to count till tomorrow morning. But then between 4 and 6 a.m., they decided to start counting again. Hundreds of thousands of tallies of votes, almost every vote, or a huge percentage of them, 90% going for Biden. That's number 1. Why would you stop? What are the chances that it was only these Democratic cities? What are the chances that they all found all of these ballots almost exclusively? Second, the fact that Republicans weren't allowed to watch. Now, Fox News had in places like Philadelphia, Fox News had a report that said that's not true. Republicans were in the room. Once more, just like I told you with the story of Todd, how the media lies and they straw man and then brand down that straw man. The truth is, yes, Republican poll watchers were allowed in the Philadelphia Convention Center. 100 feet away. That's the truth. So what Fox
and with no electronic devices.
That's right. So Fox News is lying to you. If you don't believe me, then read the court order. Right? Literally, the Trump team had to go to court to allow people within 6 feet, which is the state mandated law that says the poll watchers are allowed to be within 6 feet. So a court had to reverse the decision and say, yes, Trump people were allowed that close. And then what happened, Todd? They stopped counting the votes and said, no, we're going to challenge it. We don't want Trump people there watching. Right? Isn't that what happened?
Yeah, the Wolf administration challenged it at the Pennsylvania Supreme Court level and overturned the Commonwealth Court, and that's what got Alito involved at the Supreme Court level.
Can I ask you a question for both of you? Can either of you tell me what was the basis of their challenge? The Democrats' challenge.
I have not... I don't know. I've asked every Democrat I know. What potential? This is what I've been told. When I asked people, I don't know what they said in court. I'll tell you this. When I asked every Democrat I could find, what would the potential reason be for not wanting Trump supporters there to watch, our Republicans to watch the polls? Well, you know what they told me? Well, one time in Santa Fe in like 1993, a Republican poll watcher engaged in some sort of violence.
Yeah.
That's it.
No,
That's
no,
your
no.
rationale.
I'm not talking about that.
Putting an argument that they were being, how do I say this? They were being non-compliant. That's why they had to back up. Well, that's not what the state law says. They need to be right there in the mix, socially distanced, to be able to challenge any of those ballots.
No, wait a minute. Let me just make sure that I'm clear here. The average American person in Lycoming County that's a Republican or otherwise wants to know what is the legal reason the Democrats challenged the order.
He just told you that's what it was. That they said that basically that there was interference in the poll watchers. They were behaving in an improper way, and that's why they weren't allowed to be that close.
Was that in the order that was put out?
All right,
what I'm
let me
asking.
dig it up, and then I'll give it to you.
No, I'm not saying why don't you know. I'm just saying, do we know for certain that that's what it was? In the meantime, let me ask you this, Rob. This will let's go back in memory lane. Remember in February when the Trump campaign came to you and asked you to help them out? Because they came to me. Remember that?
Yeah, they offered me a job. Yeah.
What was the single most important tactic that they wanted to do and they wanted to execute as part of the campaign? Do you remember?
I mean, I walked
Get
away.
mail-in ballots in the hands of Republicans.
Yes.
So let's backtrack from that point in February. When they said that, I'm going to be honest with you. And I love the person that came to me, and she's the district supervisor in our area. And I think she's fantastic and an unbelievably hard worker. And I think it was County Commissioner Bunn praised her and all her hard work and how much she helped Tioga County. But it froze my heart. It froze my heart that they were counting on getting into an arms race with Democrats regarding mail-in ballots. But let's backtrack one step from that. Did you know that every single politician at the state level in the legislature who had an opportunity to vote for this in Lycoming County voted to have mail-in ballots? Is this a symptom of the fact that the identity politics that was used to claim that we needed mail-in ballots was voter suppression, and Republicans just didn't know how to answer that question? Could it be that simple that we lost the election because Republicans didn't know how to handle the identity politics question of this is voter suppression? The wind blows and it's voter suppression. Your thoughts?
Republicans are weak. They caved. I mean, I don't know what the reason is, but yeah, they caved. They allowed them to change the election the way we do it in Pennsylvania and all around the country. They should have known that they would lose. The truth is 80%, I can't say 80, a large portion of the establishment Republicans don't like Donald Trump. They'll be happy to be in the minority status and leave Joe Biden be president. Lindsey Graham smoking a cigar, drinking cognac right now. This is exactly what they wanted. That's why it happened, because the people you vote to represent you don't really represent you. It's that simple.
And one more question. What percentage of the vote, being that this is one of the highest turnouts in the country ever in our elections, what percentage of that vote do you think was people voting against the president as opposed to voting for Joe Biden?
100.
Well, your analysis of that.
I mean, 98%. I mean, again, it's very confusing. We're jumping all over the place. Like, so now we're saying all the votes for Biden were legit. Okay. If that's what we're saying, I think then that those votes were not for Joe Biden. I think that even the people I know that voted for Biden, the overwhelming majority of them were like, I just hated Trump. That's not fraud. That's totally their right. But
right.
Yeah, clearly this, as I said, Joe Biden was an empty suit. Not making fun of him. He has cognitive decline. He couldn't tell you what almost any of his policies are. Kamala Harris is willing to do whatever her corporate masters tell her. She'll be for busing one day, against busing the next day. She thinks Joe Biden's a sexual assaulter, but then she agrees to work with him a month later. So this is the Democratic Party. This is their ticket. They want two empty suits, and this was an election for or against Donald Trump. It was that simple. Can we get back to talking about the evidence of the fraud? Because like one of the things I was going to say is my Democrat friends that think, well, it's not a big deal that Republican poll watchers weren't allowed to be watched, but you want every ballot counted. That's fine. I have the compromise. We'll recount the vote with only Trump supporters. No Democrats there, right? If it's impossible to cheat, the Democrats would be fine with that. They'd say, absolutely. Allow only no Democrats anywhere within 100 feet, and let's just leave Republicans count the vote. They would say, oh, yeah, that's reasonable. It's not that the Republicans could do anything. Of course, when I brought that up to my Democrat friends, they, many of them, or not friends, but people, many of them were like, well, wait, that would be absurd. Why would you only want one side there? There's it seems like you're trying to hide something. Exactly.
They don't get it.
So that's what happened. Other things of examples of what could lead to strongly suggest fraud. Wisconsin. Look, I put an article out from the BBC that talked about signs of, this is from 2016. It was signs of election fraud. And they're particularly looking at like burgeoning nations like in Africa. So what does our intel agencies and our military and political system view as possible signs of vote rigging, right? And this is from the BBC in 2016. Now, as you go through this list, you see that basically every single criteria is met by the United States this time. But yeah, the one you're on there, Carlos, is what I want to focus on. So go down to that third paragraph there. It says, nope, back up. It says, voting is compulsory in Gabon, but it is not enforced. Even in Australia, where it is enforced, now understand what they're saying, it is illegal, punishable by a fine in Australia to not vote. So even there, where you have to vote legally, what's the vote turnout? 90 to 95%. You know what the vote turnout is in Wisconsin? 90%. Now, could it be true that we just have a lot more civic engagement right now? It could be, but that's astonishing. That's an astonishing number. And that sort of turnout isn't matched. That sort of turnout isn't matched anywhere near that, anywhere else in the country.
Ever.
Not only ever, but this election. Right. So it's like, what is it? So we're supposed to believe, just in Wisconsin, 90% of people that are registered to vote went out and voted. That's insanity. That at least warrants heavy scrutiny, especially seeing as how Wisconsin was one of these states where Trump was winning. Then it claimed to stop counting the vote. Then in the middle of the night, it came and said, oh, wait, we're reporting 100,000 votes. Almost all of them were for Joe Biden. Then we see another thing, the discrepancy between the presidential and the state elections. So there are places all over the place where it looks like hundreds of thousands of people only voted for Joe Biden and then left blank the rest of the ballot. That's incredibly skeptical, to the point where almost no House seats were flipped. I think there may have been one now, but maybe zero. So in this election where there was so much enthusiasm for the Democrats, yet they couldn't flip any House seats? You're talking about specific districts that have hundreds of thousands of less votes for the down ballot Democrats than Joe Biden. And it's not that those down ballot Democrats then voted Republican in many, right? So it's like Trump had 100 votes in this county, but he had 200 votes for the Republicans underneath him. Biden had 200 votes, but only 100 votes underneath him. That's not what happened. It's just people only voted top of the ticket. Other things, regardless of what you think about fraud or whatever, it is clear, as I said before, that the media was all in the tank basically for the Democrats. And do you want to keep going through this article or?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to find where you are here.
Oh, no, I'm off that article. I mean. Oh,
okay.
But well,
the large number of invalid votes is important. The more, that doesn't apply, but results that don't match, and delay in announcing the results is the real big one.
Right.
But it should be noted, and I just want to be able to come in and let you talk. But I just want to interject one thing. The average number of votes, of people that vote across the country in presidentials is 58% is a number that I saw. I don't know if that's accurate, but compare that to the 90% in Wisconsin is shocking.
Right. Absolutely. So the media, we talked about, that's not even evidence of election day fraud necessarily. But as it pertains to election day, I mean, how can you justify Fox News calling Arizona at 1% in? I mean, Biden may win Arizona, and there may be no fraud in Arizona. I don't know. Biden could win it. But the idea that the media called, if he wins it, it's going to be within a few thousand votes. Either way that goes, it's going to. Yet Fox News and the AP was able to call that for Biden at 1%.
Right. And if so, Biden, what's your analysis of it? Why did they call it?
Well, if Biden ends up winning it, they'll say, see, we were right. That's not what calling it is. Calling it means that you're assuming basically there's no chance that the other side could win. And it is clear that that was not the case. Why did this happen? Well, because what the media was intending to do was they were going to hold back on calling states for Trump as long as possible and call them for Biden as early as possible. And the reason is because they put out an article and they told us exactly what they were going to do. Josh Shapiro, the attorney general, for example, in Pennsylvania, told us on Saturday before the election that it'll look like, or no matter what, if we count all the ballots, then it'll be obvious that Trump lost. In other words, if Trump won Pennsylvania, then it must have been fraud. But the Democrats that are whining, saying, oh, Republicans talking about fraud, they don't have a problem when actual Democratic officials were making the same argument. They don't have a problem when Hillary Clinton said that you shouldn't concede the election under any circumstance. They don't have a problem when they war-gamed out the transition integrity team, war-gamed out the scenario and said, by no chance should Joe Biden concede whatsoever. But in addition to that, we also had them putting out articles that talked about the red mirage, where the media was telling us election night, it'll look like Donald Trump won. But then there'll be ballots that come in and it'll turn out that Joe Biden won. So what they wanted was when you went, I'll wait until is there something you wanted to read here?
No, I wanted to just bring in Arizona. The guy that called Arizona for Fox in the decision desk, who was in charge of calling the states, is a registered Democrat who voted for Hillary and shelled out $4,000 for Obama and Dems, according to the FEC and voting records. I don't know if you had seen that before, but that's guy, Arnon Michigan, that called the election desk decision at 1% for Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this was part of their plan because the idea was they wanted people to beat it in people's head. No matter how fishy it looks, trust us, don't believe your eyes. No matter how fishy it looks, the Democrats will really win. So that's what it was. They didn't want it to look like, oh, we called Texas, we called Florida for Trump. Arizona's way too close to call. People going to bed saying, wow, it looks almost like a foregone conclusion that Trump will win. They didn't want that because then they might question, wait, why did all these Democrat places stop counting ballots in the middle of the night? Why is it that they found hundreds of thousands of ballots almost entirely for Joe Biden? Why is the voter percentage 90% in places like Wisconsin? Why is it that there would seem to be so many ballots that just filled out Joe Biden but didn't fill out anything else down ticket? So, I mean, now, then the last thing I have is Sidney Powell talked, and I talked to Senator Mastriano about this. Sidney Powell talked about how she believes that they have evidence that Hammer and Scorecard, two CIA programs, were used to sway virtual tallies on the votes. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do believe that the CIA has that ability and that, it's clear that the intel agents were all in it against Donald Trump. We see evidence of their coup out in the public. So yeah, that's something worth considering. Why would we even have a system where something like that's potentially possible? So, and then there's all sorts of allegations of individuals saying, I'm a poll worker, I saw this. I can't speak to that. It's worth investigating, but I don't know if that poll worker really saw that or not. I don't know. So we'll see what bears fruit from those things. But, all of this, is there a chance that even with everything that I just said, that everything was on the up and up and there was no... plus we had examples, at least in Michigan, of what I was able to use their website to see at least a handful of people that were dead that allegedly voted. And if you have a handful, that means that there's many, 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 many more that are fraudulent that you couldn't catch, that someone like me wouldn't be able to catch. But, it's possible that all of this was on the up and up. I think it's very unlikely. I'd put it at about a 2% chance. But that doesn't matter because to all of the gloating and, the people on the left that are like, oh, my goodness, how can't you just accept these results? Why do you have to call fraud? I had to listen to the Democrats and not just random online people, but actually Democrats in positions of power like Hillary Clinton, Democrats in the Senate, Democrats in the House, the media, the intel communities. I had to listen to them whine that the 2016 election was stolen because 12 Russian trolls posted memes on Facebook in Pokemon Go. That was enough to steal an election. So if 12 people using Facebook stole an election, what happens when the entirety of Facebook's in the bag for one candidate? What happens when the same with Google, or the same with Twitter, or the same with the media? And so I understand right now, and some hope to Trump supporters out there, and then a little caveat to that is I understand that you'll hear these people bragging and saying, oh, Joe Biden won. Haha. It's good. We're glad that all the media is for Joe Biden. We're glad that all the tech companies for Joe Biden. We're glad that the intel agencies for Joe Biden. Those people will not get what they want. I mean, their side won, but Joe Biden is ultimately a corporatist globalist. He will not do anything for, the progressives. So you'll get to see them whining and moaning soon. Now, it's not something I'll mock them for. I'm trying to reach out to those progressives because they don't understand that because Orange Man bad, they just voted in all the corruption that will keep an actual real progressive from ever attaining power. So, once they realize it, once they soberingly realize, oh, geez, we just voted for the very interest that will keep their boot on our neck, then hopefully we could potentially reach out and start to realize that the only issue that really matters is this sort of corruption and censorship. So, yeah, I think you're muted, Carlos.
I'm going to post a picture that former President County Commissioner Jack McKernan sent me from the rally in Harrisburg. But as we look at this photo, Rob, can you talk to us about your thoughts regarding when you hear the words globalist cabal, what comes into your head? Give us an idea of, and it's 1246. So give me 2 minutes on what your take of what the globalist cabal is and what they're doing and how it affects us as regular citizens.
The closer you get to local government, the more that government has the interest and the control of the citizens in heart. So you have more control over your town government than you do of your state government, and more over that than you do of the national government. Globalism is about giving those that already have the most wealth and power more control of wealth and power. For example, if you're a company like Microsoft, you don't like the fact that each country has different rules, regulations that you have to go through, and it's hard to bribe and hard to influence different leaders in every different country. If there's just one country, if there's a globalist society, you don't have to worry about that. You only have to influence one government, which is their motivation for that. So what that does is it gives all of these people, your politicians at the national level, the people that, refuse to have term limits that are in office for 47 years, like Joe Biden. What this does is it gives them supreme power to understand that the biggest impediment to them having total control is the fact that there are working class people, that there are nation states, there are state governments, there are local governments, and there are people that just want to work, be left alone, and be self-sufficient. They don't want that. They want everyone reliant on them. And this isn't something new. This is human history. People with power want more power. That's what they want. They want more power. They're willing to give you free stuff. Of course, here's free food. Here's free shelter. As long as you worship them. That's what the idea is. So when you're talking globalist cabal, there is this, conflagration of political leaders that you see, particularly unelected bureaucrats like those in the State Department, the intel agencies, but then also massive corporations like Amazon, these tech corporations, places like Google. All of them have the interest of coming together to have one set of rules, one set of governance that they can then have total control over. So that's what this is about. And of course, that's why they're for things like eroding the borders, granting illegal immigrants citizenship, dismantling the economic successes of middle-class America. They don't care. They want everyone to be dirt poor. It is a return to feudalism. They want to live on ivory castles while we all work as serfs below them. And yes, they'll throw us bread in circuses. That's the plan. So, and make no mistake about it. You're like, oh, those evil Democrats. Yes, I agree. Almost every Democrat's involved in this party. You don't think Mitt Romney is? You don't think John McCain was? You don't think Jeff Flake is? Those are all Republicans.
Right.
Lindsey Graham. Right. So
Lindsey Graham and Mitt Romney and Pelosi and Schumer ostensibly are members of the same party, is what you're saying.
Yes. And that's what, if you're questioning that, check out the Lincoln Project if you're a Democrat fan. Check out the neocons like Liz Cheney. What's she up to, right? What are all the neocons? Max Boot, Bill Kristol. Who are they all supporting? They all supported Joe Biden for president. Now, I'm old enough to remember when my friends on the left were against things like the Iraq War. Now you're voting for the people interested in pushing more Iraq wars. You're voting for the people that are saying, you can never pull troops out. That's what you're doing. And it's my failure. Let's be honest. It's my failure and people likes me that we were unable to reach enough people on the other side to tell them, like, these tools, the weaponization of the intel community, doing the behest of the military-industrial combat, the censorship of anyone who has an opinion that is against the establishment, that's all going to bite our friends on the left just as hard. I tried, but I failed to reach out to them. And so they voted for it. And, it'll happen slowly, but I'm already seeing some of it. You'll start to see, for example, Twitch is a platform that I'm on that I'm streaming now. Overwhelmingly politically left-wing, which is fine, right? You'll start to see left-wing people switch censored on Twitch. Maybe people that are like, I wish Joe Biden would go further to the left. They'll start to be censored. And then they're going to look like, what happened? How did this happen? Now, all the things we heard, and hopefully we'll do a show after, if Biden wins, which I believe he will. I believe he'll win these court challenges. But hopefully we do a show going through everything they told us Donald Trump was going to do, the left, and did it happen? Remember his finger was going to be on the nuclear button and we were going to get in all these wars and he'd be nuking people? Did that happen? Oh, wait, no, that's the Democrats that don't want us to pull out. Or how about how he was going to lock people up and take their rights away, particularly like religious minorities? Oh, no, that's de Blasio doing it to the Jews in New York, isn't it? Everything they accuse Trump of all this. And you know this, Carlos. I know we've talked about it. We're both conservatives that support gay rights, right? Both of us are. Remember, Trump, they told us how horrible he would be for gay people. Remember that? First Republican president that flew the LGBT flag, the rainbow flag at the convention. Hasn't done one thing. Appointed more people that are gay
ambassadors
to ambassadorship, Grinnell, right? All them. Yet we were told that he was going to have gay people in chains. So all that fear mongering, he's going to censor anyone that disagrees with him and locks them up. Nope, that's the left. They're the ones that are using tech to censor people. So, I get it. And this is the last thing I'll say. And I want to hear, what you and Todd have to say.
No, it can't be the last thing you say.
In this segment. Look, if you're a Trump supporter, you have to expect that the other side's going to gloat. I don't mind it at all. That's fine. I wasn't the type that gloated in 2016. I have the records to back that up because I think that I saw what I was trying to go for was a different goal, was to trying to reach out to friends on the left, showing them how horrible and corporatist the establishment Democratic Party was and how they screwed over Bernie in 2016. So I was trying to reach out to those people instead of laughing at them. But many Trump supporters did laugh at them and mock them. So you're going to get the same treatment. And remember, even if you say, but I think this is election stolen. So a lot of people on the left thought the one in 2016 was stolen. They were wrong, but that's how they felt. And so when you made fun of them, they waited for 4 years and now they're going to make fun of you. And I don't care. If you're out there and you're on the left and you're making fun of me, that's fine. I don't mind at all. Just try to make it funny. That's all I'll say. But, so don't get salty that the other side's going to rub it in. They are. And instead of getting salty and complaining, just look at what they're suggesting. We didn't make lists of Hillary supporters. We didn't have prominent Republican politicians saying, let's get lists together of all the Hillary supporters so we could round them up. That wasn't us. That's as soon as they thought they won the election this time, what did AOC do? What did thousands of Democrats do? Yes, let's make the list. Let's get that list. So, hey, you see from the fruits of people's actions what they really are. It wasn't the right that was out there riding. It wasn't us making lists. That's the left. So if you're on the left and you're cheering for a list, you might just find your name on one eventually. And if so, sorry about your luck, I guess.
Todd, any updates?
So there's a Business Insider article, and I'll just quote from it. Since the Pennsylvania decision was a 4-4 split on a state, we don't really know how strictly the Supreme Court views that rule and how it's going to enforce it, Smith said Tuesday. But it could come up in the post-election phase as it did in Bush v. Gore, where several justices thought that the Florida Supreme Court was violating Article 2 by changing the rules contrary to the system that had been specified. All of these cases
I know
are
where you're
in Article
going.
2 of the Constitution.
Right. I know where you're going. Yeah.
Mark Levin is banging this drum on a daily basis, nightly basis. If the Supreme Court and the 4 conservative justices that already sided, right, and John Roberts sided with the liberal side, if that block stays and Amy Coney Barrett comes down on the side of Article 2, which I fundamentally believe she will as a constitutionalist, it's 5-4 to overturn all the nonsense, and Donald Trump is reelected president.
Well, no,
that's what I'm
he wins. He wins Pennsylvania. He wins Pennsylvania.
I'm telling you right now, they're going to challenge in every one of these states that they claim went the other way.
So
Georgia's
what
having
is
a
the
recount.
difference?
Georgia's having a recount. Wisconsin's having a
Right.
recount.
So just inform us, because I think that I understand what you're saying, and I'm confident that Pennsylvania will be overturned on the merits that you just explained. But explain to us how that affects Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia, and I guess Arizona too, right? Or no?
The legal argument's going to be is that what was done in those states is a fundamental affront to Article 2 because they changed the rules contrary to the system that had been specified. When you're counting 100,000 ballots at 2 o'clock in the morning and everything stopped, how are you counting those ballots?
Right.
It's also the fundamental structure of how those ballots were
In
brought
darkness.
to bear in the first
That's how you
place.
count it. You count them in darkness.
Yeah, you know, again, I hope I'm wrong, Todd. I really hope you're right. Maybe we'll bet a steak dinner on it, but I don't see it being overturned. I think you're right on the legal merits. I just don't think they care. I think
and again, Rob, I'm not disagreeing with you. From everything we've seen in the record, do they have the will to do that?
Right. I mean,
it's like a dear friend in the legal profession told me. You argue facts, you argue the law. If you don't have the facts, you argue the law. If you don't have the law, you argue the facts. Well, in this particular case, I would argue that the incumbent candidate has not only the law, but the facts too, that everybody's breaking the rules to throw him out of the White House. And when you have a national media figure who's a pretty well-educated guy,
Mm-hmm.
they need to escort him from the White House in handcuffs tonight. Excuse me. He doesn't get inaugurated, whether he's staying or going, whoever that person is, till mid-January. I thought you had an education.
Right.
Just because he lost an election, they're going to take him out in handcuffs?
Yeah, that's
I
wishful
can't do it
thinking.
anymore.
This is a live shot. This is a live shot from Harrisburg, of the Trump rally in Harrisburg. Rob, so you have been the point of the spear on our show regarding the fact that you've always thought that this was going to be a stolen election. You've said it for a long, long time. You brought up the fact that Joe Biden never had coherent policies. You brought up the fact that he never really had press conferences, and when he did, no one asked him questions. You brought up the fact that there were no appearances from this guy except in Philadelphia because it was 30 miles from his house. You brought up the fact that the media was always protecting him at every single turn. You brought up the fact that the corporatists always gave him all the money. Can you explain to us how, in your opinion, the polling was a key component to the fact that the fix was always in?
Well, the polling was set to shape public perception in the first place, and there are studies that show that polling affects how people vote because, for example, if you believe that your candidate has no chance of winning, a lot of people, there's something subconscious about it that they want to vote for the winning side. So a lot of people, if they think, oh, Donald Trump's down 9 points, in this particular state, well, I'll vote for the winner. So the other thing is the polling. So it was set up to do that, to change votes, but it was also set up to, if they stole the election, that it would gaslight people into saying, well, of course Biden won Pennsylvania. He was up how far in the polls? He was already up. He was up 7 points in the polls. So, yeah, he won by 2%. That sounds reasonable. Trump did a little better than expected. But, of course, Biden won. Trump wasn't going to overcome 7% in the polls in Pennsylvania. So that's what was going on with the polling. Look, it's sad. All of these let me just put it this. So if you're my friend on the left right now and you're thinking, I don't see it, I don't see evidence of the election day fraud, maybe you're right. I think you're heavily wrong. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest it. We'll see. We'll see what's brought out in court. But if you think there was no fraud, what you're agreeing to then is the following, that if Joe Biden, basically an empty husk of a man, can be drugged to the finish line, because the national media, the intel agencies, the corporations, the tech companies, entertainment industry, and academia have willed that to be so, it no longer matters who candidates are for any race. Whoever these organizations pick will be your leader. And if the people that have told me for months now, Rob, you don't understand. Systemic racism. The systems are racist. The people controlling this country are racist. You just co-signed that they get to choose every single winner of your election. That's what you did. You have given the system, you have given the corporations, you have given the media companies, the tech companies, the CIA, the FBI, you have given them the power to decide every single election. If they could do this with Joe Biden, possibly the least, not even possibly, definitely the least energetic, least exciting candidate in my lifetime, if they could do that to him and drag him across the finish line, who can't they do? So I get it right now, you're celebrating. But remember, when they drag Jeb Bush across the finish line and you're infuriated when he starts a bunch of war, it won't matter, Biden will start the wars anyways. But when they have some neocon that they drag, I don't want to hear the complaints then from the left. You signed off on that. You were fine with the next time Bernie Sanders gets screwed, or Jill Stein, or Tulsi Gabbard, or anyone else that comes up and wants to be progressive. You signed off on that. That's what you people did. Now, I'll be here to say, look, I tried to warn you. Now, why don't we come together and fight the only issue that matters, this sort of corruption? That's what I'll be trying to do with you. But I just want to let you know, before you go bragging and think that this is some victory and, oh, we're gonna mold Joe Biden to what we really want. We'll see. I'm sure you'll have more of an influence than the corporate people that paid for Joe Biden to be there. So good luck. Good luck with that, you know?
At 1:01 p.m., Todd, final thoughts, please.
I just have one. It's not over. It's just getting started. And nothing gets certified till mid-December anyway. So everybody, calm down. Calm down.
Okay. Any news from the ticker that you see that we should know about before we...
Yeah, there's a lot of lawsuits that are happening right now, and that the 2:00 briefs are due by the Pennsylvania Democrats to the Supreme Court. I believe they already answered last night and basically said, well, we've done nothing wrong. We're going to keep the status quo. And now we're just waiting on the hearing with SCOTUS of when that in-person hearing is going to happen. I would argue probably within 10 days, 2 weeks. The other part of this is, keep this in the back of your mind. For any of the shenanigans that have gone on in this election, the Department of Justice wait 10 days after the election to file any kind of letters of interest or anything like that. Bill Barr has yet to weigh in. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it is extremely disconcerting that the Attorney General of the United States has not weighed in, given all the accusations of corruption that we have. But that being said,
why would he? Why would Bill Barr weigh in?
Well,
don't you know, Carlos?
Right?
Bill Barr and Durham are they're still working diligently on the people we know engaged in a coup against Trump. So I'm sure right around 2029 they'll get around to looking at the what went on in the election this time.
There'll be a special report that'll be handed down.
Yep.
Okay. So my closing today is a mishmash of a lot of different things, because there's a lot of things going on. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, AOC, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, came out and pushed for an enemies list. What does it say about our country that no single Democrat that I've heard of at any state or federal level has condemned what she said? That's a concern. It's a concern to me that there are no Democrats that believe like Rob. So if you watch the 24-hour digital Trump rally, I asked almost every single guest that came on, what was the number one political issue? Okay, and it ranged, it varied across the spectrum. But Rob Noors, my co-host, his number one political issue is corruption.
Since
You
2003.
You can't move forward if you have corruption on either side. So I ask, why has there been nobody condemning what AOC said about having lists that target Republicans? Why isn't there one Democrat in the Pennsylvania legislature that agrees with Senator Mastriano that there are, like Todd says, shenanigans going on with respect to our voting and the lack of transparency? Not one Democrat is concerned about any corruption that looks like, I mean, you know, if you believe all the reports, we might not be able to prove it right now because we have limited information and we're distanced between us and where the corruption is. But nobody has a concern. No one has a concern enough to come out and say it. That's really concerning. And listen, our country is a vast country. Let me give you an example. In Florida, where the pollsters said, what was it, 9% lead for Biden, Rob?
Where at?
Florida?
Well,
9% or more?
It was, I think the average was 5% is what they
Okay.
had. But there were some polls,
in
Quinnipiac,
Florida.
I think. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, if you go to Florida, Biden was supposed to win going away. Okay. 5% is a big number in our politics today. There's no clear-cut, easy wins anymore. So this is how complicated our country is. Cubans and male blacks and married women came out overwhelmingly in support of the president. But those same exact people voted to institute a $15 minimum wage in the state of Florida. Still think that politics are easy in this country? Who would have thought? I never would I have thought that the very same people that elected the president and his platform, after 4 years of economic independence and economic strength, and records in the stock market and records in unemployment and records in wage growth, at all levels, across all types of different groups of people, would ever vote for a $15 minimum wage. My thoughts gravitate towards the statements of Joe Biden that says that we need to bring people together. He said it last night. This is the same guy that in the last debate called the president a racist and called Trump supporters chumps. And have called the Republican Party white supremacists and Nazis for 4 years. He's the same guy. My concern about stopping the voting is that when you stop counting, or when you're still counting votes 2 days after the fact, is that the politicians running the process know what the deficit is. The vote deficit. It's one of the problems. One of the problems that we have is that we have to vote on election day. And the reason is because we need to declare a victor on election day. We're the only country that doesn't do that, or didn't do that this time. Guess what? We are now a shithole country. We are now the banana republic that we claim we are better than. Because Republicans, and specifically the President of the United States, didn't know how to answer the charge of voter suppression, we might have lost this election. With respect to Nevada and Wisconsin and Washington and Oregon, we did not win any single state. Rob and I talked to this guy, Tiberius, on the 24-hour Trump rally, digital Trump rally. You know what he said? He says, the reason why we lost those states was very simple, is that Republicans don't know how to talk to these people. I couldn't have said it better. Are you telling me that there are no small business people in Wisconsin, or forget about the states, in Kenosha, Minneapolis, Portland, and Seattle? There's no small business there at all? Think they're happy? Think they feel safe? How can we have lost? Well, in Oregon and Washington, we've lost because not only did we not know how to talk to people in Washington and Oregon, we don't care to talk to those people. For the longest time, electoral college-wise, we didn't care to talk to those people. They didn't have that many votes, and they never mattered, and we always assumed that they were in the Democratic column. We never tried. We never tried. They took over Seattle for almost a month. Okay? So there are people that are out there that don't understand the things that I just brought up, but make sure that you know that you need to go out and inform yourself. You need to be more informed than just a casual average American. We need you to do more. We need you to learn more. We need you to try harder. And I'm asking you, because it looks like we don't have any politicians in the Republican Party that are asking you to give more. I know you are the sovereign, but we need you to be more involved. We need you to go out and start filling those committee seats in your party, especially the Republican Party. The Republican Party in Lycoming County has 177 seats, and only 78 of them are filled. Yeah, there's 99 empty seats as we speak right now in the Lycoming County committee, empty. And they have been 4 years. I've been here 17 years. So please, we need more from you. I know you care. I know you love our country as much as we do. And I'm not saying that we're better, but I am saying that politically, we've worked really hard in the last year to be able to inform ourselves. And if we can do it, you can do it. And it's really, really important. Until next week, unless, of course, something happens where we have a show sometime during the week. I want to thank all of you for watching. And